Ambassador Krelveth of the Moravian Dominion had lived for 300 standard cycles. In that time, he had negotiated treaties with 17 species, witnessed the fall of 2 interstellar empires, and survived the burning of Kolrath Prime. He had seen wonders that would drive lesser minds to madness, and horrors that still haunted his sleeping hours. But nothing in all his centuries of existence had prepared him for the look in the human ambassador's eyes when the Dominion's War Council voted for the attack. The memory surfaced unbidden as Krelveth stood before the assembled delegates of the Galactic Concord. His chitinous exoskeleton, once a proud azure, had faded to a sickly gray in the years since that fateful decision. His forearms trembled as he gripped the speaking podium, and his compound eyes swept across the vast assembly chamber. 1,200 species, 1,200 representatives from across the known galaxy, and all of them staring at him, waiting for him to explain why he had called this emergency session. Distinguished delegates, Krelveth began, his translator device converting his clicks and whistles into the Concord's common tongue. I come before you today not as an ambassador of the Moravian Dominion, for the Dominion, as you know, no longer exists. I come as the last survivor of a civilization that made the greatest mistake in galactic history. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Moravian Dominion had been one of the galaxy's great powers. 17 inhabited worlds, 400 billion citizens, a military fleet that had once made even the ancient Prothean hegemony pause before encroaching on their territory. And now, a single survivor stood before the Concord, his people reduced to scattered refugees begging for asylum across the spiral arm. 20 standard cycles ago, Krelveth continued, my people encountered a species new to the galactic stage. They called themselves humanity, and they came from a world called Earth, a death world in the unfashionable end of the Orion Cygnus arm. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably at the mention of the name. The younger species seemed confused, but the elder ones, those who had heard the whispered warnings that had begun spreading through the galaxy, grew very still. We were arrogant, Krelveth admitted. We saw a species that had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Their ships were primitive. Their technology was centuries behind our own. They had no allies, no protectors, no empire to call upon for aid. And they possessed something we wanted. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Their world, Earth, was rich in heavy elements, rare isotopes that would have fueled our expansion for millennia. And so, when the human ambassador refused our generous offer to relocate their population to a more suitable world, my people's war council saw only one option. Krelveth's voice dropped to barely more than a whisper. We attacked them. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species called out questions. Others simply stared in horrified understanding. But Krelveth raised his 4 arms, calling for silence. What followed, he said, is why I have called this emergency session. Because there are those among you, and I know this, for I have heard the whispers, who look upon humanity's small territory, their modest fleet, their apparent lack of aggression, and see opportunity. There are those who believe, as my people once believed, that humanity can be conquered, that their resources can be claimed, that their world can be taken. His compound eyes seemed to focus on every delegate simultaneously. To those among you harboring such thoughts, I offer a single warning, a warning purchased with the blood of 400 billion of my people. A warning I pray you will heed, so that you will not share our fate." Krelveth leaned forward, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "Never attack humans, because if you do, escape is impossible." Part 2, First Contact. The Moravian Dominion had discovered humanity quite by accident. Exploration vessel Corinth 7 had been mapping the outer regions of the Orion Cygnus arm when its sensors detected something extraordinary, a world teeming with life in a system that all models suggested should be utterly barren. The star was too active, the planet too close to the asteroid belt, the neighborhood too unstable for complex life to evolve. And yet, there it was. A blue-green marble hanging in the void, its atmosphere thick with oxygen and nitrogen, its surface crawling with an impossible diversity of organisms. Captain Vrex had ordered the ship closer, curiosity overriding caution. What they found defied explanation. The planet, which the natives called Earth, was a nightmare made manifest, a death world of the highest order. Its surface was battered by constant seismic activity. Its weather systems spawned cyclones that could swallow Moravian cities whole. Its axial tilt created extreme seasonal variations that would have driven any sensible species to extinction millions of cycles ago. And the life forms. Gods of the void, the life forms. Every single organism on that world seemed locked in perpetual warfare with every other organism. Predators stalked the lands, the seas, the very air. Venomous creatures lurked in every shadow. Microorganisms that could kill in hours permeated every surface. Even the plants were hostile, armed with thorns, toxins, and in some cases, the ability to actively hunt and consume other creatures. But the most terrifying thing on that nightmare world was the dominant species. Humans. They should have been prey. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. They were slower than most predators, weaker than most herbivores, and possessed none of the biological weapons that other species used for survival. They couldn't even regenerate lost limbs. And yet, they had conquered their world. They had conquered it through sheer, unrelenting persistence. Humans, the Moravian scientists would later discover, were pursuit predators. They didn't outrun their prey or overpower it, they simply followed it. For hours, for days, for weeks if necessary. They followed their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, until its muscles failed, until its heart gave out. And then they killed it. This was the species that had mastered fire, crafted tools, built cities, split the atom, and reached for the stars. This was the species the Moravian Dominion decided to attack. Part 3. The Refusal. The human ambassador was a tall female named Sarah Chen. She had dark hair, dark eyes, and a way of standing perfectly still that made Krelveth deeply uncomfortable. Most species moved constantly, shifting, twitching, adjusting. Humans could become absolutely motionless when they chose to, like predators waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The negotiations had been going poorly from the start. "We are prepared to offer your people significant compensation," Krelveth had said, speaking as the lead negotiator for the Dominion. "A new world, far from the turmoil of the galactic core. Advanced technology to help you rebuild. Credits enough to establish a new economy. All we ask in return is that you relocate your population from Earth." Ambassador Chen had remained motionless throughout his speech. When he finished, she simply stared at him for a long moment before responding. "You want us to leave our home. "We want to offer you a better home," Krelveth had corrected. "Earth is a death world, dangerous beyond measure. Surely your people would be happier on a world where survival doesn't require constant struggle?" Chen had smiled then, and something in that smile made Krelveth's exoskeleton itch. "Ambassador Krelveth," she said, "do you know why humans evolved the way we did? Why we became pursuit predators rather than ambush hunters or herd grazers?" Krelveth admitted that he did not. "Because our world is hard," Chen explained. "It's violent and dangerous and completely unforgiving. And somewhere in our evolutionary past, our ancestors faced a choice: adapt or die. They adapted. They became the most efficient long-distance travelers in Earth's history. They learned to track prey across savannas that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. They learned to persist when every other predator would have given up." She leaned forward, her dark eyes locked onto Krelveth's compound ones. "That persistence is written into our DNA, Ambassador. It's in our bones, our muscles, our very minds. We don't give up, we don't surrender, and we absolutely do not abandon our home because someone else decided they want it." Krelveth had felt a chill run through his exoskeleton, but he pressed on regardless. "Ambassador Chen, I urge you to reconsider. The Dominion has the resources to take what we want. We are offering you a peaceful alternative." Chen's smile widened, but it never reached her eyes. "Then let me offer you an alternative, Ambassador. Go home. Tell your War Council that humanity is not interested in their offer. Tell them that Earth is not for sale, not for trade, and not for the taking. And tell them." She paused, and for just a moment, Krelveth could see something ancient and terrifying looking out through her eyes. Something that had been honed by millions of years of struggle on a world that tried to kill its inhabitants every single day. "Tell them that if they attack us, we will find them, every single one of them, and we will not stop until there is nothing left to find." Krelveth had delivered the message. The War Council had laughed. They were not laughing now. Part 4. The Attack. The Moravian fleet had been magnificent. 1,200 warships, the pride of the Dominion, arranged in perfect formation above the blue-green world called Earth. Their weapons could crack continents. Their shields could shrug off asteroid impacts. Their engines could outrun light itself. Against them, humanity had precisely 47 combat vessels, primitive things, armed with chemical propellants and crude nuclear weapons. They formed a thin defensive line between the Moravian fleet and their homeworld, and to any outside observer, they looked like prey waiting to be devoured. Fleet Admiral Korthax had given the order without hesitation. Destroy them. The battle, if it could be called a battle, lasted exactly 14 minutes. Human ships exploded like overripe fruit as Moravian particle beams tore through their hulls. Their weapons, fired in desperate volleys, splashed harmlessly against shields that had been designed to withstand forces 1,000 times greater. A few brave human pilots attempted ramming attacks, sacrificing themselves to scratch the paint on Moravian cruisers. Within a quarter hour, the human defense fleet had ceased to exist. Admiral Korthax had watched the destruction from the bridge of his flagship, the inexorable Triumph, and felt nothing but contempt. This was the species that had dared to refuse the Dominion? This was the threat that Ambassador Chen had warned him about? He ordered his ships to begin orbital bombardment. The first salvo targeted human military installations. The second targeted their industrial centers. The third targeted their population centers, because Admiral Korthax had decided that relocation was no longer an option. Better to cleanse the world entirely and start fresh. Billions of humans died in the first hour. Cities burned. Continents cracked. The ocean itself began to boil as the full might of the Moravian fleet was unleashed upon a world that had no way to fight back. And through it all, Admiral Korthax watched with satisfaction. He did not notice the small, primitive vessel that slipped away from the carnage and jumped to faster-than-light travel. He did not notice the automated probes that rocketed away from the dying planet, carrying precious data in their memory cores. He did not notice the emergency bunkers buried deep beneath the mountains and the oceans, where millions of humans huddled in the darkness and made promises. Promises that they would survive. Promises that they would remember. Promises that they would come for those who had done this. And promises that they would never, ever stop. Part 5. The First Sign. The attack on Earth had been 17 cycles ago. In the years that followed, the Moravian Dominion had thrived. Earth's resources had proven even more valuable than anticipated, and the elimination of humanity had served as a warning to other species who might consider refusing Dominion demands. Trade flourished. The military expanded. New colonies were established across the spiral arm. Admiral Korthax had been promoted to Supreme Commander of all Dominion forces. Krelveth had risen to the position of Senior Ambassador. The War Council members had been celebrated as heroes who had secured their species' future for millennia to come. And then, 17 cycles after the attack, a ship appeared at the edge of Dominion space. It was a small vessel, barely larger than a shuttle. Its design was crude, its technology primitive, its hull scarred and pitted from what appeared to be decades of hard travel. It should not have been threatening in any way. But the symbols painted on its hull made every Moravian who saw them feel a chill run through their exoskeletons. Human symbols, human writing. The ship did not attack. It did not attempt to communicate. It simply sat at the edge of the system, visible to every sensor in the Dominion, and waited. For 3 days, it waited. Supreme Commander Korthax sent a cruiser to investigate. The cruiser arrived to find the human vessel gone, jumped to FTL without a trace. But in its place, floating in the void, was a single object. A message buoy. The buoy contained a recording, a video message that would soon be transmitted to every world in the Dominion, and from there to every corner of the galaxy. Ambassador Sara Chen's face filled the screen. She looked older than Krelveth remembered, her dark hair streaked with gray, her face lined with years of hardship. But her eyes were the same, dark, focused, filled with something that made Krelveth want to run and hide and never stop running. "People of the Moravian Dominion," Chen said, her voice calm and even. 17 years ago, you attacked our world. You killed 7 billion of our people. You burned our cities, poisoned our oceans, and left our planet a scarred and broken ruin. She paused, and something that might have been a smile crossed her face. You thought you had destroyed us. You thought that humanity was extinct, wiped from the galaxy like so much cosmic dust. The smile widened. You were wrong. The recording shifted to show images. Images of vast asteroid bases hidden in the Kuiper Belt beyond Earth's system. Images of factory ships harvesting resources from comets and moons. Images of construction yards where new vessels were being built, vessels that looked nothing like the primitive craft the Dominion had destroyed so easily. For 17 years, we have been watching you, Chen continued. We have been studying your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. We have been building and growing and waiting. The images shifted again, showing a fleet that stretched across the void in perfect formation. Hundreds of ships, thousands, sleek, deadly vessels armed with weapons that had been reverse-engineered from captured Moravian technology and improved upon in ways that Moravian scientists had never considered. "We are coming for you," Chen said, her voice dropping to barely more than a whisper. "Every ship, every station, every colony, every world. We are coming, and we will not stop until there is nothing left of your dominion but ashes and memories." The recording ended with a single word, spoken in Chen's native tongue. "Run." Part 6. The Hunt Begins. They came from nowhere. The first attack struck the Moravian colony of Thessax IV, a mining world at the edge of Dominion territory. The defense fleet stationed there was considerable, 50 warships supported by orbital platforms and ground-based weapon systems. It should have been able to hold against any reasonable attack for weeks, long enough for reinforcements to arrive. The human fleet destroyed it in 18 hours. Reports from survivors painted a picture of impossible efficiency. Human ships moved through space like predators, coordinating their attacks with a precision that bordered on telepathic. Their weapons, energy beams that seemed to ignore shields, missiles that adapted their trajectories in real time to avoid point defense, tore through Moravian vessels like they were made of paper. And when the battle was over, when the last Moravian ship had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris, the human fleet descended upon the colony itself. They did not use orbital bombardment. They landed troops. Human soldiers, encased in powered armor that made them look like nightmares given form, stormed through the streets of the colonial capital. They moved with that same terrifying efficiency, clearing building after building with brutal precision. Moravian civilians who surrendered were taken prisoner. Moravian soldiers who resisted were killed. And when it was over, when the colony had been completely subdued, the humans simply left. They took their prisoners and their salvage and jumped to FTL, leaving behind a world in ruins and a single message for the Dominion. 1. Supreme Commander Korthax mobilized the entire Moravian military. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was deployed to hunt down the human fleet and destroy it once and for all. What followed was not a war. It was an extermination, but not the kind Korthax had intended. Part 7. The Nature of Pursuit. The human fleet refused to engage in conventional warfare. They struck without warning, appearing from FTL at the edge of a system, launching their attacks with surgical precision, and then vanishing before Moravian reinforcements could arrive. They targeted supply lines, communications relays, sensor networks, anything that could be used to track or coordinate a response. And they never stopped moving. Supreme Commander Korthax deployed hunter-killer groups to track them down. Fast ships, crewed by the best officers in the Dominion, equipped with the most advanced sensors available. They followed the human fleet's energy signatures across the spiral arm, always arriving just moments too late. The humans, it seemed, never needed to rest. Moravian crews required regular sleep cycles. Their ships required periodic maintenance. Their officers required time to analyze data and plan strategies. But the human fleet kept moving, kept attacking, kept pressing forward without any apparent need for rest or recovery. "How is this possible?" Korthax had demanded during one particularly frustrating strategy session. They are biological organisms, not machines. They must tire eventually. Krelveth, who had been studying human physiology in an attempt to find weaknesses, provided an answer that brought no comfort. Humans sleep, yes, he explained, but they do not require continuous sleep the way we do. They can function for extended periods without rest, and they can recover from sleep deprivation faster than any species we have encountered. Furthermore, their crew rotations allow them to keep their ships operational at all times. While some humans sleep, others work. Their ships never stop because their crews never stop. Then we will do the same, Korthax declared. Increase crew sizes. Implement rotating shifts. They tried. It did not work. Moravian physiology required a specific sleep-wake cycle tied to their homeworld's rotation. Disrupting that cycle led to decreased cognitive function, impaired decision-making, and eventually complete mental breakdown. Crews that attempted to match the human operational tempo began making fatal errors within weeks. And still, the humans kept coming. Part 8. The Message. The attacks continued for 3 cycles. 3 cycles of constant warfare, constant movement, constant fear. The Moravian Dominion, once a proud interstellar power, was being slowly dismembered by an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Colonies fell. Fleet groups were destroyed. Supply lines collapsed. And with each attack, the humans left their mark. A number, painted on the ruins of the latest victim. The numbers climbed higher and higher, a grim tally of destruction that the Dominion seemed powerless to stop. On the 100th attack, the humans changed their tactics. Instead of striking and vanishing, they occupied. A major Moravian colony, Krelethax Prime, home to 3 billion citizens, was invaded and captured. Human troops established defensive positions, human ships deployed in orbit, and a message was broadcast to the entire galaxy. Ambassador Chen appeared on every screen in the Dominion. "People of the Moravian Dominion," she said, "for 3 years we have hunted you. For 3 years we have shown you what happens to those who attack humanity. And for 3 years, your leaders have refused to surrender, refused to take responsibility for the genocide they committed against our people." Her expression hardened. That changes now. The image shifted to show the captured world, its cities intact, its population unharmed, but completely under human control. "We are not monsters," Chen continued. "We do not seek to exterminate your species. We do not desire the destruction of everything your people have built. What we seek is justice. What we seek is accountability." The image shifted again, showing the faces of the Moravian War Council, the officials who had ordered the attack on Earth. "These are the individuals responsible for the death of 7 billion humans. We want them. Surrender them to us, along with Supreme Commander Korthax and all others who participated in the attack on our world, and we will end this war. We will release Krelethax Prime. We will return your prisoners. We will withdraw from your territory and never trouble you again." Chen's dark eyes seemed to stare directly into the souls of everyone watching. "Refuse, and we will continue. We will take your worlds one by one. We will dismantle your civilization, piece by piece. And we will not stop, cannot stop, until every last one of those responsible has been brought to justice." The recording ended with the same single word as before. Run. Part 9. The Pursuit. The War Council refused to surrender. They believed, even after 3 years of defeat, that the Dominion's superior numbers and resources would eventually prevail. They believed that humanity would tire, that their attacks would slow, that eventually the human fleet would make a mistake that could be exploited. They did not understand what they were dealing with. Humans were pursuit predators. Their entire evolutionary history had been shaped by the hunt, by the relentless, patient, unstoppable pursuit of prey across hostile terrain. They had not evolved to sprint and rest. They had evolved to walk and walk and walk until their quarry simply could not walk anymore. And they had brought that mindset to war. The human fleet did not tire. They did not make mistakes. They did not slow down or pull back or give the Dominion any chance to recover. They simply kept coming, kept attacking, kept pressing forward with the same implacable determination that their ancestors had used to run down prey on the African savannas millions of years ago. Krelveth understood this. He had studied humanity extensively during his time as an ambassador, and he recognized what was happening. They are not trying to defeat us in battle, he explained to anyone who would listen. They are trying to exhaust us. They are applying pressure from every direction, forcing us to respond, forcing us to move, forcing us to expend resources faster than we can replace them. They are doing to our civilization what their ancestors did to antelope on the plains of Earth, running us to death. Nobody listened. The War Council, in their desperation, began making increasingly irrational decisions. They diverted resources from civilian infrastructure to military production. They conscripted citizens who had no military training and sent them to die in hopeless battles. They abandoned outer colonies to focus on defending the core worlds, leaving billions of Moravian citizens to fend for themselves. And still, the humans kept coming. Part 10. The Fall of Korathax. The Moravian homeworld fell on the 18th cycle of the war. By then, the Dominion had been reduced to a shadow of its former self. Of 17 original worlds, only 4 remained under Moravian control. Of 1,200 original warships, fewer than 100 still functioned. Of 400 billion original citizens, barely 50 billion survived. And against them came the full might of humanity's vengeance. The fleet that arrived at Korathax was not the scrappy guerrilla force that had begun the war nearly 2 decades earlier. It was a proper battle fleet, thousands of ships, supported by carriers and cruisers and dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the Dominion had ever built. Weapons that had been tested and refined through 18 years of constant warfare. Crews that had been hardened by countless battles against an enemy that had once believed itself invincible. Supreme Commander Korathax, his forces depleted beyond recovery, made his last stand above the world where his species had been born. It lasted 6 hours. The human fleet moved through the Moravian defenses like a blade through cloth. Shields that had once seemed impenetrable were overloaded in seconds. Ships that had survived 100 battles were torn apart by weapons that had evolved specifically to kill them. And when it was over, when the last Moravian warship had been destroyed, the human fleet descended upon Korathax itself. Krelveth was on the surface when the invasion began. He watched human dropships fall from the sky like rain, disgorging thousands of armored soldiers into the streets of the capital. He heard the sounds of battle, energy weapons, explosions, the screams of his people, growing closer with every passing hour. He huddled in the basement of the ambassadorial palace, surrounded by other government officials, and waited for the end. It came, as all things must, with the sound of boots on stone. Human soldiers flooded into the basement, their weapons raised, their movements precise and efficient. They separated the civilians from the officials, the innocent from the guilty. They worked with the same methodical patience they had shown throughout the entire war, unhurried, unstoppable, inevitable. And at the head of the column came a figure Krelveth recognized. Ambassador Sarah Chen, now decades older than when they had first met, stepped through the doorway and surveyed the captured officials. Her hair was completely gray now, her face lined with age and stress and the weight of everything she had endured. But her eyes, those dark, predator's eyes, were exactly the same. "Ambassador Krelveth," she said, her voice calm and even. "We meet again." Krelveth could not find the words to respond. Chen walked slowly among the captured officials, studying each face with careful attention. When she reached the cluster of War Council members, those who had survived this long, she stopped and simply stared at them for a long moment. "Where is Korthax?" she asked. One of the junior officials pointed with a trembling hand. "He took a shuttle, tried to escape to the outer system. He said he would never surrender to primitives." Chen nodded slowly. "I see." She turned to one of her officers. "Track him, find him, and bring him back here alive. I want him to see what happens next." The officer saluted and departed. Chen turned back to the captured officials. 18 years, she said quietly. 18 years since you burned our world, since you killed our families, our friends, our children, since you left us with nothing but ruins and ashes and the memory of everything we had lost. Her voice never rose, never wavered, but there was something in it that made Krelveth want to crawl away and hide. "Did you think we would forget?" Chen asked. "Did you think we would give up? Did you think that time or distance or your vaunted military might would protect you from the consequences of what you did?" She shook her head slowly. "You do not understand us. You never did. We are pursuit predators. We evolved to chase our prey across continents, to follow the herds for days and weeks and months, until they simply could not run anymore. Patience is in our blood. Persistence is in our bones. And once we decide to hunt something, nothing can stop us." She leaned close to the War Council members, her dark eyes boring into theirs. "You could have run to the other side of the galaxy. You could have hidden for 1,000 years. You could have built a fortress that blocked out the very stars. And we would have found you. We would have come for you. And we would have done exactly what we are doing now." She straightened and stepped back. "This is the lesson the galaxy needs to learn. Attack humanity and escape is impossible. Harm our people and we will follow you to the ends of the universe. Not for glory, not for conquest, but for something you apparently never considered when you gave the order to destroy our world." Her eyes swept across the captured officials. "Justice. We will have justice, and we will pursue it for as long as it takes, no matter the cost, until every last perpetrator has faced the consequences of their actions." Supreme Commander Korthax was captured 6 days later. His shuttle had made it to the outer system before its drive failed. He was found huddled in a survival pod, half dead from exposure, babbling incoherently about monsters that would not stop chasing him. When the human soldiers breached his pod, he had tried to trigger a self-destruct sequence, only to find that his equipment had been sabotaged long before the Dominion's fall. Humans, it seemed, had anticipated that possibility. The trial was held in the ruins of the Moravian capital, broadcast to every world in the galaxy. The accused were the surviving members of the War Council, along with every officer and official who had participated in the attack on Earth. Over 2,000 individuals in total. The evidence presented was irrefutable. Sensor logs from the attack, orders authorizing the bombardment, communications discussing the decision to exterminate humanity rather than simply relocate them. Everything had been preserved, recovered, and assembled into a case that left no room for denial. Ambassador Chen served as the lead prosecutor. Her closing argument would be remembered for millennia. "Distinguished observers," she said, addressing the countless billions watching across the galaxy. "You have seen the evidence. You have heard the testimony. You know what these individuals did to our world and our people." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Some of you may believe that our response, 18 years of war, the complete destruction of the Moravian Dominion, the pursuit of these criminals across the entire spiral arm, was excessive, disproportionate, perhaps even savage." Her expression hardened. "To those observers, I say this: we showed restraint. The Dominion killed 7 billion of our people in a single afternoon. They burned our world. They left our civilization in ashes. And when we finally caught them, when we finally had them at our mercy, we did not do to them what they did to us." She gestured at the accused. "We did not exterminate them. We did not burn their colonies. We did not leave their species as scattered refugees begging for asylum across the galaxy. We gave them trials. We gave them due process. We gave them justice, when justice was the last thing they showed us." Her voice rose slightly. "Because that is what separates us from them. That is what it means to be human. We pursue our enemies until they can run no farther. We never forget and we never forgive unprovoked attacks on our people. But when the pursuit is over, when the quarry is caught, we do not become the monsters we hunt." She turned to face the accused directly. "You are guilty, all of you. Guilty of genocide, of crimes against sapient life, of the murder of billions. And you will face the consequences of your actions. Not death, that would be too easy, too quick. But imprisonment, isolation, long years of contemplation about what you did and why you did it. Long years to understand the magnitude of your crimes." She stepped back. "And for the rest of the galaxy, let this trial serve as a warning. Humanity will not be the aggressor. We will not seek to conquer or dominate or destroy. But we will defend ourselves. We will protect our people. And if anyone attacks us, if anyone harms our civilization, we will pursue them." Her dark eyes swept across the countless observers watching from across the stars. "We will pursue them until there is nowhere left to run, nowhere left to hide, nowhere left to seek shelter from the consequences of their actions. Because that is what we are. That is what we have always been." She turned and walked away from the podium. "Pursuit predators, and escape is impossible." Part 12. The Warning. Krelveth finished his testimony before the Galactic Concord. The chamber was utterly silent. 1,200 species, 1,200 representatives, and not a single one made a sound. They simply stared at the elderly Moravian, their eyes wide, their minds racing as they processed everything he had said. "I am the last survivor of the War Council's inner circle," Krelveth said quietly. "All others have passed, Some from old age, some from the stress of their imprisonment, some from what I can only describe as a gradual loss of the will to live. I was spared because Ambassador Chen believed that I should live to tell this story, to serve as a warning to others who might be tempted to follow the path my people walked.
He spread his 4 arms wide.
And so I stand before you today, the final living testament to the greatest mistake in galactic history. I have seen humanity at war. I have witnessed their patience, their persistence, their absolutely terrifying refusal to give up. I have watched them pursue an enemy across 18 cycles and 300 light years, never stopping, never slowing, never resting until every last perpetrator had been brought to account.
His voice dropped to barely more than a whisper.
They are not monsters. They are not savages. They are not the destructive force that some propaganda suggests. In the years since the war, they have proven themselves to be valuable members of the galactic community, trading partners, scientific collaborations, even friends to those who approach them with respect.
He paused, letting his words hang in the air.
But they remember. They always remember. And if anyone in this chamber is foolish enough to harm them, to attack their worlds, to threaten their people, they will not forget. They will not forgive. And they will not stop until justice is served.
Krelveth stepped back from the podium.
I was tasked with delivering a warning, and that warning is this: humanity is not to be trifled with. Not because they are the strongest species in the galaxy, or the most advanced, or the most numerous, but because they are the most persistent. Because when they decide to pursue something, nothing can stop them. Because escape, quite simply, is impossible. He bowed his head. Learn from our mistake. Do not repeat it. Or you will find, as we found, that there is no corner of the universe distant enough to hide from a species that was literally built to run its prey to death. The chamber remained silent as Krelveth walked slowly toward the exit. But just before he reached the door, a voice called out from the assembly. "Ambassador Krelveth?" He turned. The speaker was a young representative from a species he didn't recognize, perhaps one of the newer members of the Concord. "Yes?" The young representative hesitated, then asked the question that everyone in the chamber was thinking. "The humans who survived the attack on Earth, the ones who rebuilt their civilization and waged war against your people for 18 years, what happened to them? Where are they now?" Krelveth was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he pointed toward a section of the chamber that he had been carefully avoiding throughout his testimony. "They are here," he said quietly, "in this very chamber. They have been listening to my testimony from the beginning." 1,200 representatives turned to look. In the corner of the chamber, almost unnoticed until now, sat a small delegation of humans. Their ambassador, a young woman with dark hair and darker eyes, rose to her feet and inclined her head in greeting. "Distinguished delegates," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent chamber. "My name is Ambassador Li Wei. I am the great-great-granddaughter of Sarah Chen, who led our people through the darkest period of our history and brought us back from the edge of extinction." She looked around the chamber, her expression calm and composed. "My great-great-grandmother passed away peacefully 17 years ago, surrounded by her family and friends. She lived long enough to see humanity rebuild, to see us join the galactic community, to see us become something more than the traumatized survivors of a genocide. She died knowing that her people had survived, and that we would continue to survive for as long as the stars burned in the sky. Ambassador Lee's gaze swept across the assembled delegates. Ambassador Krelveth has told you the truth about what happened between our peoples. He has warned you about the consequences of attacking humanity. I stand before you to offer a different message, a message of hope rather than fear. She spread her hands. Humanity does not seek conflict. We do not desire conquest. We do not wish to dominate or destroy or subjugate. We came to the stars in search of knowledge, of wonder, of new friends and new experiences. We came hoping to find civilizations that would welcome us as equals and share in the great adventure of existence. Her expression softened slightly. When the Moravian Dominion attacked us, they awoke something in our nature that we had hoped to leave behind on our homeworld, the pursuit instinct, the predator's drive, the absolute refusal to let an aggressor escape the consequences of their actions. We became, for 18 terrible years, the hunters that our ancestors had been on the ancient savannas of Earth. She shook her head slowly. But that is not all we are. It is not even most of what we are. It is simply the response we have evolved over millions of years to protect ourselves from threats. Attack us, and you will face it. Harm our people, and you will never escape. She took a deep breath. But approach us as friends, as potential partners, as fellow travelers on this great cosmic journey, and you will find us to be the most loyal, most dedicated, most generous allies you have ever known. Because just as our ancestors formed bonds with the pack to survive the dangers of our world, so too do we form bonds with those who show us kindness. Just as we will pursue an enemy to the ends of the universe, so too will we pursue a friend through any hardship, any danger, any obstacle that stands in our way. Ambassador Lee smiled, a warm, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. That is the other half of the warning Ambassador Krelveth was too traumatized to deliver. Humanity does not forget. We do not give up. We pursue what we want with relentless determination, whether it is justice for crimes committed against us or the welfare of those we have chosen to protect. She looked around the chamber one last time. Choose wisely how you wish to be pursued. As an enemy to be hunted, or as a friend to be cherished. The choice is yours. Epilogue. Generations hence. 500 cycles had passed since the end of the Moravian War. The galaxy had changed in ways that would have been unrecognizable to those who had lived through that terrible conflict. New species had risen to prominence. Old empires had faded into history. Technology had advanced beyond the wildest dreams of previous generations. And humanity was still there. Still watching. Still waiting. Still remembering. The Galactic Concord had grown to include over 3,000 species, and humans held positions of respect and influence throughout its institutions. They were known as reliable partners, fierce defenders, and absolutely implacable enemies. The warning that Ambassador Krelveth had delivered so many centuries ago had become something of a galactic proverb, passed down from generation to generation as a cautionary tale for any species that might be tempted by aggression. Never attack humans. Escape is impossible. But there was more to the legend now. More to the story that species told each other about the persistent predators from the death world called Earth. They spoke of the bonds that humans formed, deep, unbreakable connections that could last lifetimes and span generations. They spoke of human loyalty, of the lengths to which humans would go to protect those they considered friends and family. They spoke of the crews of human ships that had died defending alien colonies, of human diplomats who had sacrificed their careers to protect the rights of species that had no one else to speak for them, of human scientists who had shared their discoveries freely with anyone who asked. The galaxy had learned the full truth about humanity. They were pursuit predators, yes. They were persistent, patient, absolutely terrifying when aroused to anger. They would hunt an enemy across centuries and star systems and never, ever give up. But they were also pack bonders. They formed families not just of blood, but of choice. They adopted friends as readily as they adopted children, bringing them into their circles of protection and refusing to let anything harm them. They would defend a friend with the same relentless determination they used to pursue an enemy, forever, without hesitation, without counting the cost. The Moravian Dominion had seen only half of humanity. They had seen the hunt, the pursuit, the predator's drive to run its prey to exhaustion. They had not understood that the same traits that made humans such terrifying enemies also made them the most dedicated allies in the galaxy. And so the warning evolved, as warnings do, over the centuries. The young species still heard the original version, "Never attack humans. Escape is impossible." And they trembled at the thought of those relentless pursuit predators. But the older species, those who had lived alongside humanity for generations, knew the rest of the story. They knew that there was a corollary to the warning, a promise that was just as binding, just as absolute, just as reflective of humanity's deepest nature. Never attack the friends of humanity. Escape is also impossible. Because humans did not simply protect themselves, they protected anyone they had chosen to love, anyone they had decided was worthy of their loyalty, anyone who had earned a place in their pack. And just as they would pursue an enemy to the ends of the universe, they would pursue a threat to their allies with the same implacable determination, the same refusal to give up, the same patient, persistent, absolutely unstoppable drive that had carried their ancestors across the savannas of Earth and their descendants across the stars. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned to earn humanity's friendship. Because while it was true that there was no escape from human vengeance, it was equally true that there was no limit to human protection. While it was true that humans would hunt an enemy until the heat death of the universe, it was equally true that they would stand beside a friend through any hardship, any danger, any challenge the cosmos could throw at them. And so, 500 cycles after the Moravian War, the galaxy rested under the watchful eyes of the persistent predators from Earth. Species that had once trembled at the thought of human attention now sought it eagerly, competing for the honor of alliance and the protection it provided. Conflicts that would once have erupted into devastating wars were settled peacefully, because all parties knew that drawing human attention was the worst possible outcome for any aggressor. The galaxy was not at peace. It was far too vast and varied for true peace. But it was more stable than it had been in millions of years. And humanity was at the center of that stability, holding the balance through their simple, unwavering nature. Never forget a friend. Never forgive an enemy. Never give up, no matter how long it takes or how far you have to go. Pursuit predators, to the very end. In the depths of space, far from the bustling core worlds and the ancient homeworlds, a small memorial floated in the void. It marked the location of a world that no longer existed, a blue-green marble called Earth, lost to the weapons of a long-dead empire. Ships passed by sometimes, paying their respects to the birthplace of humanity. They would pause in the cold darkness, their crews silent,
their sensors trained on the debris field that had once been continents and oceans and cities full of life.
And on those ships, beings of 1,000 different species would contemplate the lesson that Earth's destruction had taught the galaxy.
You can destroy a human world. You can kill billions of humans. You can scatter their survivors across the stars. But you can never, ever make them stop coming.
Because somewhere, in some hidden corner of the cosmos, humanity would survive. They would rebuild, they would grow strong again, and they would remember. They would remember every attack, every massacre, every injustice. And they would pursue, forever if necessary, across centuries and millennia, across light years and dimensions, across any barrier the universe could construct. Because that was what they were. That was what they had always been.
Pursuit predators.
And escape was impossible.
The memorial had an inscription, carved in every language known to galactic civilization. The same words repeated over and over, in scripts that ranged from elegant curves to harsh geometric shapes, to symbols that could only be perceived by senses humans didn't possess.
Those words were the final testament to the lesson of the Moravian War, the warning that had kept the galaxy stable for 500 cycles, the promise that would endure for as long as humanity drew breath and looked out at the stars.
We are coming. We are always coming. And we will never stop.
The end.